We're here with Joe Nocera today. Welcome, Joe. Joe leads our national cybersecurity and privacy practice in the financial services industry. Joe has wide-ranging experience with many of our clients implementing major IT programs as well as risk management programs. So welcome today.
Thanks, Sean. Happy to be here.
All right, one of the things that I think is on the top of people's minds and a leading trend is this convergence of cyber and fraud. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, when you think about traditional cyber attacks, they really kind of fall into three categories. There are nation-state attacks, which have various motivations, but oftentimes targeted at intellectual property and sensitive information. You've got hacktivists that are trying to disrupt things that are going on within an organization. And then lastly, you've got some type of criminal that's motivated generally by financial gain. And that's really where we see the strongest intersection with fraud. Obviously, fraud's trying to prevent financial transactions from going out that aren't appropriate. And the front end of that often is a cyber attack. And so what we've started to see is those organizations and those technologies coming together. In the past, what we saw was that the systems tended to be disparate systems. They used different analytic capabilities, different databases, and they didn't communicate with each other. Likewise, the organizations themselves were in separate parts of the firm, and they often didn't leverage similar processes and techniques, workflows, et cetera. We think when you bring those together, one, you get a clearer picture of what's happening, because you might see something on the cyber side that sort of looks suspicious, but you're not really sure. And you might see something on the fraud side that sort of looks suspicious, but you're not really sure. So the ability to connect those two together gives you more confidence, I think, in what you're seeing from a fraud perspective. I think the second aspect of that is it allows your cybersecurity to be a little less intrusive. If I can depend more on my fraud system to kind of be that last line of defense, I might be willing to take on a little bit more risk on the cyber side. So if I see a user come in and they're doing something that maybe is slightly abnormal from a behavioral perspective. Perhaps they're coming from a different geography than what I would have expected them to come from. If I know I can inform the fraud system to watch this transaction a little bit more closely, I might be able to still let them in without an additional challenge response type activity. And so we think the combination of those two together makes for a better user experience on the cyber side.
Joe, one of the challenges that not only our clients face, but we also face is resources in cybersecurity. Talk to me about sort of the unique skill set of your team, and maybe is it different from industry, or is it the same? Are we just fighting for the same types of people?
Sure. So I think that's been one of the biggest changes that I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years since I've been in this role, is the way the composition of the team has changed. There will always be technologists that need to be part of the team, but just as important is that you have folks that really understand the forensic and crisis management side of this. So either helping our clients build out incident response plans and crisis management plans ahead of time, or in the midst of a crisis, being able to work with our clients to really control the situation. And as you mentioned, the convergence with fraud, more and more we've got fraud folks as part of our team as well. So as we start to architect these cyber and fraud solutions, we can really understand how they fit together and what are the fraud best practices as well. But I think most importantly, is really the business risk focus. Somebody that can speak a risk management language, that can establish an enterprise risk management program. That's really what senior management and boards are asking for. They're saying, don't bother me with all this technical jargon that you have. Explain to me what the risk is to my business and what are we doing about it. And that, to me, is one of the unique skills that our team brings to bear.
So you bring up a good point, right? Because boardrooms, this is an issue that's affecting every boardroom, and is certainly a discussion in every boardroom. Talk to me about sort of what are those conversations like? What do you talk about? What do you tell them to be concerned about? What should they be doing?
Sure, absolutely. I think that's been another interesting change in my job over the last several years. It was rare to go to a board meeting 4 or 5 years ago for me, and now I'm in one just about every week. And so the dynamic of those board meetings really go through kind of a life cycle, if you will, of initial awareness and understanding, and then ultimately to governance when the program is really established. And so when we start on that initial awareness and understanding side, they're really asking a couple questions. They're saying, what are our most critical assets, and what are the types of attacks that could really do us harm? As a board member, I can't be worried about every little incident that happens, but I want to know that management is keeping those kind of front page of the Wall Street Journal type events from happening. Have we looked at what scenarios would be in place that could cause that, and what specific systems or applications or assets we have that would be critical? So that's kind of step one. I think the second step then is, are we doing what's reasonable to protect our environment? do we compare with our industry peers? Are we compliant with the applicable regulations in our world? How do we really stand? They want a report card or a health check. And then lastly, I think they're asking for, what's the residual risk? We know we can't protect everything, and that we've made some trade-offs from a risk management perspective. So where have we accepted risk? And also, where are we still trying to mitigate risk? Some of these things take 12 to 18 months to fix. And so they want that transparency from management. Says, these are the 3 things that we're working on, and they're on target, on track, and we're going to deliver them. I think the other side of the discussion that I see, they're asking, could that happen to us? And what lessons have we learned from those types of things? What are we doing differently in our program as a result of what we've seen within the industry? And so when we work with boards or we work with management, we really help them kind of prepare that message to the board in a non-technical way that's really focused on that risk management discussion around what's our risk tolerance and where do we see as residual risk.
Now, those are some great points, and if I bring that together, I see sort of 3 things coming from that. One, I see that your team has evolved. Not only is it technologists, but they really understand the business risk part of it. Mm-hmm. 2 is cyber has really moved from the IT to the boardroom.
Absolutely.
Right? And the 3rd is we're actually seeing this convergence like you were talking about in that AML fraud space. So really great insights. So thanks for being with us today, Joe.
Thanks a lot, Sean. It's a great discussion.